Okay, so this is my second time filming part of this video and I have a lot of shows to talk about, so bear with me. I hope it's not too long. We're gonna try and power through. Hi everyone, my name's Chloe, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for being here today. Today's video is going to be a theatre wrap-up video. Now I normally do these monthly and I did actually film the first part of this video, not the part that you're going to see because I'm sort of going to talk over them again today. But I did try and film for these shows that are going to be in the first part of this video once already. I did it at the end of March because this is going to be the wrap up of March and April. However, I never edited that video. April I didn't really put any videos up. I was in the middle of packing, ready to move. I have now moved. I'm now in my new house down in London, so there will be more shows in these wrap ups going forward because I was spending a lot of time out at the theatre. But I thought that rather than sort of putting up that video, which I wasn't particularly happy with at the time anyway, I will just do a sort of mega wrap up of everything that I saw in the months of March and April. Part of me did think that this wouldn't be that much to talk about because I'm like, well, in April I was busy, surely I didn't see that much. And I forget that I was down in London the first weekend of April and I saw quite a few things while I was here. So I'm not going to ramble on for too much longer. You know what these videos are. They are basically just where I go through all of the shows that I saw during the last, for this time only, 2 months, and I talk through sort of quick thoughts and feelings on each of them. They are not like the most in-depth reviews. I am getting better at doing reviews on this channel, I think, with theatre. I am thinking of maybe doing like more long videos about like particular shows. Like if there's one show I go and see, doing like a longer video about that one rather than doing like just these wrap-ups. But that's a whole thing to come. For now, it's probably just going to be quite brief thoughts because some of these I saw 2 months ago and my thoughts are less like fresh in my brain than they were before for obvious reasons. But without further ado, let's talk about everything that I saw in the month of March and April. So towards the beginning of March, I came down to London for the weekend and the first show that I ended up getting tickets for is one that I've been desperate to see for a while. It's had a few different runs in different places and we managed to see it the week before it closed on the West End and I was very, very happy about that. And that show is My Son's Queer But What Can You Do? This is by Rob Madge, who is the person that you can see on the cover of this programme here. And basically it is the story of their life. It's told through song, it's told through song, it's told through dialogue, it's told through home videos that they found. Essentially that's what it is. They found some old home videos and it is when they were putting on a Disney parade in their own house when they were a child, and it's sort of the story of them and their family and sort of growing up and figuring out themselves and their sort of queer identity and that not necessarily being accepted by everyone but then by some people just being like really supported. And it's just this really beautiful story that did make me cry quite a lot. There's like I was doing fine, like I'd heard it made you cry, I was doing fine, and then it got to one particular bit and I'm just like, no, I'm gone. And it wasn't even like, it wasn't a sad bit, it was more like crying because it was so joyful. Like it was beautiful. I really, really love this show. I hope that there are sort of more incarnations of it in the future. I'd love to see something else that Rob Madge writes. It was just a very, very good show. I would give this one 5 stars. There's nothing much else I can say about it. It was just, everything was so uplifting and heartwarming and I loved it so much. The next show that I saw, I'm actually only going to talk about briefly right now because I'm going to give more fuller thoughts later on, because I saw the first preview of Bonnie and Clyde. This is the new run at the Garrick Theatre. Previously it was on at the Arts Theatre last year. I did see it twice there as well. The reason I'm not really going to talk about it too much for like this particular time I saw it is that it's because it was a first preview, like things were still being worked out. Some of the issues that I had with it weren't worked out by the time I went to see it again when it was officially open, but I'll talk about those things in a minute when I get to the time that I saw it again. But for this first preview, I did really enjoy it. I did enjoy seeing the show. I think I maybe prefer it in a more intimate setting at the Arts Theatre, but overall I did like it. Some of the changes that they've made to it again aren't my favourites, but again I will get onto those in a minute because that'll be sort of the version that was set for like reviews and things like that. But in general, had a really good time. The performances are really good, but that's what we came to expect, and happy that I saw it again. Not really going to give a star rating to this particular time just because it was a first preview, but again I'll come back to this one in a little bit. I should also say, normally I say who I've been to the theatre with. The first one I went to go and see with Meg, surprising to nobody. The second one was with Meg and Maddie, and then the third one was with Meg, Lisa and Becca, and we all went to go and see Wicked. Now you may notice there are some signatures on here because we went to stage door after, because this particular performance was Lucy Jones and Helen Wolf's last performance before at the end of their contract. So I'm a big Lucy Jones fan. I've seen her in quite a few things. Obviously I've seen her in Waitress quite a few times. We all know by now that's one of my comfort shows. I used to see it a lot when it was on the West End. So I was very, very excited last year when she announced that she was going into Wicked, and and I had tickets to go and see it in November, and then the day that I went, Lucy wasn't on, which, you know, I'm never going to be angry that her cover's on, but it was slightly disappointing just because I did want to see her so much. So I knew that I needed to go and see her before she left, and obviously a day when she's very likely to actually be there is the last day of the cast change. And I'm happy to say that she was as good as an alphabet as I hoped and expected that she would be. She was fantastic. Like, obviously it's slightly different as well, being the last performance. They do tend to kind of like go for things a little bit more. They do a couple more options on things, and like it was great seeing that. I would have liked to have seen her just do it like regularly in her run at some point, just so I can see it sort of like as like the regular version of it in a way. Like I said, the options that she did on things were fantastic, but I would have also just liked to have seen like a regular performance. Like the crowd as well were very, very loud, which it was a good thing. Like they were a lot more respectful than maybe the crowd when we went to go and see Bonnie and Clyde, with that being first preview. Obviously everyone was very excited then, but it did seem to feel like sometimes people were cheering before they'd actually finished the song. Like they were still doing the big notes at the end of songs and you couldn't hear them hit the notes because people were cheering too loud. I did really like the fact that the audience at Wicked did kind of let them actually finish the songs before erupting into like ridiculous applause. But no, I had a great time at this one. Helen Wolf was also fantastic. I'd already seen her as Glinda. She was on when I went last November, but she was also fantastic. I really liked them two together. I feel like they had a really good connection with each other, and yeah, I just had a really good time with this one. I also cried. I don't cry when I go and see Wicked very often, but it wasn't the show itself, it was the speeches they did afterwards, because they were on stage for like a good 15-20 minutes after, just doing speeches about all the cast that were leaving, and it was just really adorable. And like I said, we went to stage door after and got them both signed, so Lucy Jones, Helen Wolf, and there's not too much else to say because I feel like lots of things have been said about Lucy Jones as a performer, and like you expect her to be very good. And like I said, Helen Wolf was also fantastic. Wicked as a show, like I've seen it many times. I feel like there's not too much else to say about it. Like it's a great show, it's a great spectacle. It's not one of my all-time favourites where I suddenly think, oh my god, I need to go and see that again. Like I can go a while without seeing it, but every time I do see it I kind of remember like, oh no, actually this is a really good show, if that makes sense. Like it's not one I think about that much, but when I do go and see it I'm always happy that I have seen it. And you may see it again in a minute anyway, so I'll be talking about it soon. So let's just put this programme down for now. Speaking of shows that I've seen quite a few times, so we went to see Wicked on the Sunday. On the Monday I was still in London, and me, Becca and Lisa were supposed to be going to see a concert, and the concert we were supposed to be going to, we decided kind of after we bought the tickets, because when we bought the tickets we were still waiting for an album to come out, and the album came out and we didn't particularly love it, and then we saw clips from the concert and we're like, oh, we don't particularly love like how this is sounding either. Maybe we should see if we can sell our tickets. And we're very shocked to find that we actually did manage to sell them, because we honestly thought no one was going to, but they managed to sell. So we said we'll go and see a show at the theatre instead. We'd all already sort of booked our travel. We were all here to go and see Wicked. Well, Becca was already here obviously, but me and Lisa had travelled down to go and see other things, so we were like, okay, we'll go and see a show. And I did not like influence this decision. I mean, I did influence it, but I didn't like tell them that we should go and see the show. They both sort of said that because we'd already paid for the tickets for the concert, that we should just put the money towards it for that, so we can buy tickets for something that maybe they wouldn't necessarily buy the tickets for regularly because the tickets were a little bit more expensive. And they both came to the conclusion that we should go and see Moulin Rouge, and I'm never gonna say no to that, obviously. So we went to go and see Moulin Rouge on a Monday night, and this time Jamie Moscato was there, because the last time I went to see it his cover was on, which again, never angry about seeing a cover, but also like I love Jamie Moscato so much and I just really, really wanted to see him in Moulin Rouge again, and I was not disappointed. He was so good. Sat in the stalls as well, which is the first time I've sat in the stalls for Moulin Rouge in the UK. When I went to see it on Broadway, I was sat in the orchestra all 3 times I went to see it. This is the first time I sat in the stalls in the UK, and I feel like that was a bad idea, because I feel like every time I go and see it now I'm going to want to sit in the stalls, and those tickets are so much more expensive. But I've said so much about this show. You don't need to hear my thoughts on it. I just have a good time every time I go and see it. I love the spectacle of it. I love the spectacle of it. I love the choreography of it. I'm a sucker for the story of it, because Moulin Rouge's film is my favourite film and I've just been obsessed with it for years. And I do feel like this show works particularly well when there is a really, really strong cast leading it. I didn't love it the first 2 times that I saw it on stage, because I didn't love the cast, but since then every time I've seen it with a cast I really, really enjoy, I've just fallen in love with the show just a little bit more. And yeah, I'm not gonna, I know I said I'm not gonna say much about it, but yeah, I gave this one 5 stars. I didn't say I would have given Wicked 4.5, and that is specifically for that time I saw it as well. That's including the performances that I saw on that day. And the same with this, like this is a 5 because I really love the cast that I'm seeing at the time, and I was very happy because Lisa and Becca also really loved it. So I was like, yay, I'm glad that my friends are also loving this musical that I love so much. So when can I go and see it again? Soon. It's gonna happen soon, we all know it is. So that was one weekend in London. Went home for all of like 3 days and then travelled back down the weekend after because we had something in particular booked, but we were like, why not make it a slightly longer weekend? And we came down on a Saturday, even though the thing we had booked was on the Sunday. On the Saturday afternoon we ended up getting tickets on the day to go and see the Great British Bake Off musical, which like I did not know what to expect with this one. Like, I mean, I expected it to be campy and ridiculous and over the top, which it was. I enjoyed this. I don't think I necessarily need to go and see it again. Like, it captured a lot of the fun of the TV show. I think it's one that's going to be like really successful going out on tour. I think a lot of people are going to love it. Like I said, it's not one that I'm necessarily going to think about and go, oh, I need to go and see that again. It's not one that I'm going to listen to the cast recording of because the songs just weren't ones that like stick in my head. But it was a good time. I do recommend people go and see it if you can. I mean, it's literally closing in the West End the day that I am filming this and the day that it's been uploaded, so you won't be able to see it again, but hopefully it does have a life beyond the West End. I really do think it will do well on tour. The performances were all just fun. I feel like they knew how ridiculous the show was and they were all just kind of along for the ride, which is exactly what you need to be for this. There were some bits that were just like so over the top. The end of Act 1 was kind of like all the iconic moments where Bake Off has gone wrong all thrown together in one song, and it was just so much. And then there was bits that were like sort of mimicking, you know, the little like videos that they have at the beginning of an episode, like the weird little comedy skits that they have that set things up. They had songs that were mimicking those, and those were also ridiculous. My main issue for this, other than the fact that, like I said, the music like was fine, but it's not something I'm gonna choose to listen to outside of the show. My main issue is actually the ending of it, which I can't really say for spoilers, but it just made me like so frustrated when I left the theatre. Me and Meg were just like, because me and Meg were just sort of ranting about it after, like, how can you do that? That is just not right. No, do not like that. But yeah, I'm still annoyed about the ending now I think about it. I'm like, no, I needed more. I just needed like one little thing different at the end, but it did like change my opinion of it. So I'd give this one like 3.5 stars. I feel like if that ending would have annoyed me so much, it would have been a 4, but like you did this to yourself because yeah, it angered me so much. But I did have a good time, and like I said, I think it's one that will do very well sort of touring around the country. I think that you're going to have a good time going to see it. It may not be like your new favourite musical, but I think you will have a good time if you do get a chance to go and see this one. And then for the evening that day, we had a very different vibe of show. So we ended up getting National Theatre rush tickets, which basically they released online like the week before, I think it was, and you had to sit in a queue to get, and they were £10 tickets, and I managed to get those for me and Meg to go and see Standing at Sky's Edge, which is a musical that is actually about Sheffield, and it actually started off at the Crucible Theatre in Sheffield. It had 2 runs there, and I was living in Sheffield at the time and did not go and see either of those runs because I'm ridiculous. But then I kept hearing like really good things about it, and it was looking at the time like it was going to win the Best New Musical at the Olivier's, which it did end up winning, and I was like, I'm gonna have to go and see this, aren't I? And again, it was like the very end of its run, and we managed to get the £10 tickets for it, and I am very glad that I did go and see this. I'll tell you the story of this one because I feel like the other ones were sort of more self-explanatory. It tells the story of these 3 different families living in this block of flats in Sheffield. It's called Park Hill Flats, and throughout sort of the time that these flats have been built there, they've had like it's had like a very different image. So originally they were sort of built and all these like families moving into them, and it was sort of like optimism of sort of starting their life there and all this sort of thing. Then they got quite derelict for a while and did not necessarily have the best reputation, and then more recently they have kind of been gentrified and they are now very expensive to rent. Believe me, I did actually look at the prices of them when I was living in Sheffield and potentially thinking about renting there, and they are not cheap. And this, like I said, tells the story of sort of 3 families throughout time. So you have people moving in sort of in the 60s, you have people in the 80s and 90s, and then you have someone moving in sort of within the last like 5-10 years. And it's all told using the music of Richard Hawley. I will say it is a musical, but it's not necessarily like a musical where they're not singing to further the story necessarily. They're not singing in place of dialogue. A lot of these songs sort of happen whilst the action is happening around them, or there'll be like an acted scene and then there'll be kind of like a break for a song. So it's different from your musical where they are literally instead of speaking to each other, they are singing to each other. It's very different from that. I really enjoyed this. The staging of it was fantastic, the acting was fantastic, the story as well was one that was like really sort of gut-wrenching at times. It really sort of affected you. I think particularly as well, like obviously it is about sort of my hometown, it's literally where it's set, so like I know people that were affected by some of the things that were talked about in here, because there were a lot of focus on things like the strikes that happened in the 80s. So mainly being set in Sheffield, it was about the steel workers, but also like touched on miners' strikes as well, because they were happening in sort of other parts of Yorkshire, like not that far away. I feel like anybody from sort of the north in England in particular is going to relate to this, but I also think it is a story that like lots of people are going to be able to find something within. I do think it's a very like regional story though in general, like as in like I don't see how well this was transferred in like other countries necessarily. I feel like it really did sort of capture the mood and the sort of impact of everything that these characters were going through in this, and some of the choreography as well was amazing. Like some of it was really like sort of like anxiety inducing actually. Like just before the interval there was this one particular song where like I felt me and Meg at the interval both sort of there was like really on edge, because it's the way that it's all sort of done with both the music and the way that that sort of progresses, and also with the choreography that went in there, and just sort of where it is at that point in the story. It was like a lot more impactful than I expected it to be. And this one is actually transferring to the West End next year, so I do recommend anyone go and get tickets for it, because it was very good, and I will probably be trying to go and see it again. Okay, next up, a show we've already spoke about once. I went to go and see Wicked again, literally the week after we went to see it the last time. This time we went to see the new cast. So the new cast is being led by Alexia Kadim, who is playing Elphaba. Unfortunately she was not on the day that we went to see her, so we ended up seeing, I'm gonna have to look up her name, I know her first name but I cannot remember her last name, so let me just find her. We saw Nicola Espelado, I believe, when we went to see it, and then Lucy St. Louis was playing Glinda, who she has recently played Christine in Phantom, and I really loved her performance in Phantom. I did really like her performance in this as well. I do feel like I want to see it again once she's a little bit further into her run. Like she was literally only a week in, and I feel like she's gonna be able to do some fantastic things. Like vocally she was incredible, and she was doing well with some of like the funnier parts of Glinda, which is like very different from what I've seen her do before, but I think she's only going to get stronger as she settles into this role more. The Elphaba we saw on this day was actually the Elphaba I saw when I went to see it in November as well, and I do enjoy her. I feel like she's a little bit quieter than some of the Elphabas I've seen, and to the point where like I actually physically couldn't hear her sometimes when she was talking, and I just feel like her presence is maybe like a little bit too calm for what Elphaba needs to be, particularly like in the second act as things get more intense. But my thoughts on the show are, as I said before, I did really enjoy it. I do want to go and see it. I know I said it's not one that I sort of think of going to see again, but I think I will go and see it again at some point this year, because I would like to see Alexia Kadim at some point, and like I said, I would like to see Lucy St. Louis sort of settled into the role a little bit more. But I did have a good time, and yeah, sort of very excited to see it a little bit later in the run, just because I think there's so much promise with these actors. Alexia Kadim has been in it before, and actually I went to see it when she was in it, and again, she was not on. It was a cover when I went to see her. So at some point I'm sure I will see her in this. I've seen her in other things. I've seen her in Les Mis and Book of Mormon, but just never managed to see her in this. So maybe someday. I should say, because I forgot to give star ratings again. Standing at Sky's Edge got 5 stars. Wicked again got 4.5. And then the next thing that we went to see was what we'd actually booked to come down to see, which was Once in concert with Carrie Hill Fletcher and Jamie Moscato. I feel like you're gonna know my thoughts on this just from me saying the cast, because like these are two of my favourites. We know this, I've already talked about Jamie Moscato once already in this video, but let me talk about him again because this was so good. Like I have wanted to see Once for quite a while now. I wanted to see it when it was on the West End and then just never really got around to going. I think it was just an awkward time to try and get tickets for it, and like just could never figure out like travel plans and things. And then had tickets to see a touring version that was supposed to be happening in 2020. That tour obviously got cancelled. So when they announced the concert and when they announced the cast of the concert, I was like, oh, I'm gonna need to see this. And it was really, really good. There was like an awkward moment at the beginning where they had technical difficulties. The sound just wasn't working properly. And we weren't sure. We were like, something's not quite right here. And it got to like halfway through the second song or the third song. I will check, there was a song list in here. It was a third song. So Jamie Moscato would come on with his guitar. He was playing his guitar and then you couldn't hear it properly. Like you could hear it because we were in the stalls, but you couldn't hear it from the speakers. And then all of a sudden it started working. And it was like, oh, okay, that's what it was supposed to sound like. And then they got through the next song and then they were singing the third song, which is Falling Slowly, which is a song that people like know from Once. Like if you only know one song from this show, it's probably going to be that one. And again, it just didn't quite sound right. And then all of a sudden they got to the end of that song and this person dressed all in black, clearly something to do with the production team, came out and sort of ushered them off stage, and it was a really weird moment because the people, like the staff sort of dotted around the auditorium, were like very calm. Like the doors remained closed, like we were assumed we were just supposed to stay in our seats. They didn't do any sort of announcement straight away, so the people, like, I don't know if it was people in front of us or next to us or whatever, but somebody around us was like, "Are we being evacuated?" We're like, no, like if we were being evacuated, we would have been told that we're being evacuated. There were clearly technical issues on the stage. They did eventually come on and do an announcement and say, "We're just having some sound issues, we'll be back with you shortly." And then they both sort of walked back out, and they did like the little bit of the scene before Falling Slowly again, and it says something about like, and there's a line about something like the world won't end if you play your song, and this is what Carrie says, and then she went, again, and it was like, oh, we're gonna get Falling Slowly again. So we ended up hearing that song 3 times because it's also like reprised at the end of the show. So I mean, I like that song, so it was great to hear it that many times. But I did very, very much enjoy this. The lighting design in this is something that I want to point out. It was stunning, particularly on, I'm gonna have to look up the song list again because I think it's just called Gold. It is. There's a song called Gold, which was just like the way that they did that with sort of this hazy light in the kind of looked like a sunset with like then splashes of gold in it. Oh, it was just beautiful, and I really wish that like this would have a longer run. I know there is a production of Once happening somewhere else this summer. I can't remember where it is, but I would like to see this again. I would like to see it with this cast again, in all fairness. Like, they play really well against each other. Like, I saw them in the original cast of Heathers, and I knew that they had really great sort of chemistry on stage together, and this did not disappoint at all. And I don't really have too much else to say about this because it's just like quite a simple show, and everything about it just worked really well. I think the only thing that I'd potentially say is that, like, because it was a concert version, like some of the staging was obviously more minimal than it would be in a full production, and all that sort of made me want to do is see a full production of it. So it's probably like a 4.5 rather than a 5, just because like I would like to see it at its full potential. But what I did see, amazing, incredible, loved it. Okay, so then I actually went a few weeks without seeing anything, and then I came back down to London at the end of March, the beginning of April, and went to see quite a few things in a short block of time. So the first thing that I went to go and see was for Becca's birthday, and if you know Becca, you'll be not surprised at all to find out what show she picked for us to go and see for her birthday, and that is Six. So this is actually the first time that I've seen this at the Vaudeville Theatre. I have seen this twice at the Arts Theatre, which was where it was running pre-pandemic, and then I saw the tour in Sheffield, and this is the first time I've seen it at the Vaudeville. As I said with Bonnie and Clyde earlier, I think this works better in a smaller venue. I just feel like the more intimate staging worked for it a little bit more. I feel like because it's quite a simple staging concept to it, you kind of need to be closer. We were only at the back of the stalls, but I just feel like some of the impact of it is lost in a bigger theatre. You either need to upgrade the staging, because if you think it's set up like a concert, and I feel like a concert and a concert staging generally gets bigger depending on the size of the venue, and I feel like this staging kind of needed to be a little bit more elaborate for the size of this venue as well. I felt the same way when I saw it on tour, and yeah, I do think it just loses some of what I really loved about it the first time I saw it in a slightly bigger venue. I also will say this isn't my favourite cast that I've ever seen. I'm not going to break it down into like particular performances of who I liked and who I didn't like, but as a whole it just wasn't my favourite time that I've seen it. I feel like some of the choices that were made for particular characters just didn't quite work for me, and I would probably give this one like a 3.5 for this particular time that I've seen it. I would have definitely rated it higher in other times that I've seen it before, but sadly this time just wasn't my favourite. I did have a great time seeing it with my friends though, so that was fun, but just sadly not my favourite time that I've seen Six. Okay, we are actually into April now, because on the 1st of April, well, I went to a concert, like an actual concert, not like Once was a musical concert. This was an actual concert, but I'm still going to talk about it here because it was a musical theatre performer, and that is Oscar winner Ariana DeBose, and I had a fantastic time at this show. So this was Ariana DeBose, also accompanied by Ben Ralhalla, who is musical director who I have seen previously in his concert that he did the previous month, and also in concerts with Jeremy Jordan. I love them both, and this was exactly what I wanted from a show that those two had put together, because when I saw Ben's concert last month, I said that like there just weren't quite as many like mashups and things as I expected there to be, but I felt like it was probably because of the limited rehearsal time, whereas him and Ariana have had time to work on these. A lot of the songs they did were ones that they've been singing for years, and some of like the mashups in here were incredible, and like vocally she's stunning. She did some dancing as well. She came on and did like a whole thing that was the BAFTA rap, the Angela Bassett Did the Thing rap, and that was like, and that was mashed up with like Vogue, and it was so good. It was just such a fun night. And yeah, I'm not going to go too much into it because obviously there's not like much to sort of pick apart in this. It was just everything that I wanted to be. It was just everything that I wanted it to be, and I really would love her to come and do something on the West End at some point soon, like an actual run in a musical, because I would love to see her like acting as well, because she was sort of telling stories and doing like little bits of acting throughout it, and I would just love to see her in like an actual role because she's so good, so very good. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to give a star rating for this, but it would be a 5, obviously. And then the next thing we went to do is, again, something that is very different from everything else, because this is an award ceremony. I went to the Olivier Awards. So we decided to get tickets for this because why not? And we bought fancy dresses because it was a black tie event. Like, you were told that if you were not dressed up, you would be turned away. And we sat up in the rousing circle of the Royal Albert Hall, and it was just a fun evening, to be honest. It was nice to sort of see like behind the scenes and how these things work. It was nice to see some musicals and plays that I had seen winning awards. It was nice to see some that I hadn't seen and thinking I really want to go and see that now. Some of them I still could, which you will see momentarily. Some of them I can't because they are no longer running, but it was just a fun evening. There were a lot of performances from different shows as well. Some of them like particularly made me want to see them again. Actually, I say you'll see them, you won't, that'll be in next month's, but like Oklahoma, for example, did a performance that made me go, I really need to see that sooner rather than later. I already had tickets booked for June with my mum, but I'm like, I may want to see that sooner. And spoiler alert for next month's wrap up, I have already seen it. And yeah, just a fun time. Not too much else to say about it because, like said, without me sort of breaking down individual performances, I will say I'm very sad that I didn't see The Band's Visit when it was on at the Donmar, because that performance was fantastic. Oh, another thing that I will point out is that because we were sitting up in the rousing circle, so basically at the Olivier's you've got sort of like the floor area, the stalls, where you've got the sort of big name nominees, people like that all down there. Then you've got the seats that are just coming up from the stalls that you have some of the nominees still sat in there as well, but it's all generally like it's people that are to do with the shows, that like invited guests. Then you have got the boxers, no idea who are sat in those at all. And then you've got the rousing circle, which is the ones that you could actually buy tickets for. There were some people like involved with the shows who were sat up there. They were sat in sort of like big groups. I'm guessing it's ones where maybe they didn't have like, I'm guessing it's ones where like the production has maybe like bought a block of tickets so that they can still come and attend, but obviously they only have so many seats that the nominees can actually sit in downstairs. So like we were sat right next to the show that won like best family entertainment or something like that, and then like the people that were working on Totoro were sat like just a bit further over, and then the people that were working on Sylvia, I think it was, were sat like just a bit further over that way as well. So it was like really like strange just to be like sort of there in the middle of all the people that were actually like their shows were actually nominated for awards. But also like just behind us there is then the gallery, which is like a standing area, and that bit was used for people who had like performed in the show. They could then go and watch the rest of the show from up in that area. And we found out that the Newsies cast were right above where we were, because we were like 2 rows from, because we were like a row from the back, and we found out the Newsies cast were literally right above us when Newsies won for best choreographer, and the cheers that were let out and you could see them all just getting very excited. And I mean, Newsies, I'm so happy that Newsies won best choreography. I think that was something that made me the happiest throughout the entire evening, and it was particularly cute because they were all very excited, like literally just above our heads. So yeah, I had a great time. I wasn't sure if I was going to go back next year, but then some of the like musicals have been announced for next year and I'm like, oh, they're going to perform now and I'm going to want to see them. So possibly I think that will happen again. We will see. I just thought we were getting towards the end, and then I picked up a programme and saw 2 more underneath it. So the day after that, so this is a Monday at the beginning of April, we went to go and see the first night of the new cast of Phantom. There's been a lot of cast change things going on in this video, but we went to go and see Phantom of the Opera, and the reason being that there was a new person playing Phantom. So actually the new Christine had been in it for a while. Raoul had not been changed, but the new Phantom took over sort of on a different day than the rest of the cast change because he had to finish up his contract in Les Mis first. And we went to go and see John Robbins as Phantom. Now, I spoke about John Robbins on this channel before. I really love him as a performer. I've seen him in Les Mis quite a few times. I've also seen him in like The Wedding Singer and something else, I'm sure. But his version of Jean Valjean is possibly my favourite Jean Valjean I've ever seen. So when it got announced that he was leaving Les Mis to go into Phantom, had to go and see it. Meg also agreed, so we both went to go and see it, and yeah, just so good, like just as good as I expected him to be. And again, one that I would like to see later in his run, just to really see how he sort of settles into the role. I will be going to see him at some point again, probably soon, because like, why not? I love Phantom. I feel like this is the show that I saw like quite a few years ago. It's one of the first shows I saw in the West End, and I did really love it. But it's one that kind of like Wicked, like I just didn't think about it for a while. And in the last sort of like year or so, I feel like I've found a love of Phantom again. I'm probably going to blame Meg for this because it's her favourite, so I feel like I've been to see it a few more times because I'm going with her. And I just really love it. And now I'm talking about it, I want to see it again. He was a very, very good Phantom. Vocally, he was everything that I expected him to be. I also feel like he captured, I also like some of his choices. Like he did sort of the more like crazy maniacal parts of it really well, but also he played a lot of the quieter moments really well, which again is kind of what I expected from seeing how he'd played Valjean. There is kind of like there is a lot of crossover in people who have played Valjean and people who have played Phantom, and yeah, and the last person that saw play Phantom was Killian Donnelly, who had also done sort of the same thing where he'd gone straight from playing Valjean to playing Phantom, and I loved his performance, but I think I might love John Robbins just a little bit more. I need to go and see him again. Anyway, on to the next show. Oh, actually, before I get onto the next show, I feel like my star rating for Phantom is a 4.5, which is like still incredible. But like, as much as I love John Robbins, there were other sort of performances that just weren't my favourite versions of them that I've seen. So like, so that's why it's not quite a 5. But it was very, very good. Speaking of very, very good, the next show that I saw was Les Miserables. The 26th time that I have seen this show. I actually took Becca for her birthday. This was her birthday present from me, because she had been saying that she wanted to see it, and I was like, I was going anyway. I'm saying this like I wasn't gonna go either way. I was going because Lucy Jones is now playing Fantine. This is what she's done after being in Wicked, and I knew I wanted to see her, and I knew I was down for the week anyway, because I've been down for the weekend for Becca's birthday, and then my mum was coming to meet me to go and see something midweek, so I was like, well, I might as well stay down for an extra day in between rather than like travelling home to come back. And I bought tickets to go and see Les Mis. I said to Becca, because she'd been saying she wanted to see it, and I was like, well, like I could very unselfishly buy you a ticket for your birthday so that you have to go and see it. And we went to go and we had a great time. We'll say the audience were not great that night. The people behind us were sat talking throughout the entire thing. Well, the entire first act, they did get told off by a member of staff, which I was very happy about. But it does annoy me that sort of like marred Becca's first experience of seeing Les Mis just a little bit. I'm like, oh, you need to go and see it again now, obviously, which there may be plans to do later in the year. But there's nothing else I need to say about Les Mis. Like, we all know I love it. Like, I'm literally sat in front of my Les Mis mug right now. I've seen it 26 times. I think that speaks for itself. In terms of, I feel like all I can really talk about for Les Mis each time I see it is the difference in cast. Who did we actually see this day? Lucy Jones was fantastic as Fantine. I have actually seen her as Fantine before, but it was in the stage concert version, so this is the first time I've seen her act it out. She did the opt-up in I Dreamed a Dream, which, like, I love it with my whole heart. Like, that opt-up, superb, fantastic. Nothing but good things to say about it. I haven't actually seen the new Valjean yet because he ended up getting injured and his start in the show got delayed. He was supposed to start the week that we went. His start got delayed, so we ended up seeing Dean Chisnell, who I have seen previously. He was the cover for Valjean one of the previous times I've been. He isn't my favourite Valjean I've ever seen, but like nothing wrong with his performance. It's just like, but nothing wrong with his performance. He just makes a couple of choices that are different from ones that I've seen other people do, and it's just not my favourite. And at this point, I can't even remember what they are. I told you I won't necessarily have the most coherent thoughts about it. There is a new Javert as well. It's Stuart Clark, who I'd previously seen in Be More Chill. There were moments of his performance that I really, really liked. There were moments when he maybe just went like a little bit too aggressive for my liking. Again, one that I will see later on in his run and see how he settles into it. I feel like because I've seen people recently that sort of at their beginnings of their run, I am like very sort of open to being like, we will see how you get on with this, but very promising what I saw so far. And like I said, I will be going to see it again because I need to go and see the new Valjean, whose name I cannot remember, and it's not in the programme yet because they've not officially taken over the role. So maybe I'll go and see this one at some point soon. I'm sure I will. Okay, we are nearly at the end. So the last show that I saw in that week, the one that my mum came down to come and see with me, we were going to go and see Elton John in concert. I'm not talking about that in this video, but we went to go and see Bonnie and Clyde. I told you I'd be talking about this one again. So I've already touched on it a little bit. Basically, I preferred it at the Arts Theatre. I feel like the more intimate setting worked better, I've already said that. But then the other couple of things I didn't want to talk about from a preview performance, because like this is sort of the locked in version of it, is some of the changes that they've made. So in the original production of it, both on Broadway and the original West End production, there were children at the start of it, and they've got rid of those now, and they've have Frances Neal McCann and Jordan Lutgage. Actually, I didn't see Frances this time. I saw Lauren Jones, is that her last name? Yes, I saw Lauren Jones, who was actually very, very good as Bonnie, I will say that. I've actually seen both of the covers now, because I saw the cover for Clyde last time. Because I saw the cover for Clyde when we went to see it at the Arts Theatre last year. Well, I saw him for like a third of the show anyway, when Jordan Lutgage had to go off halfway through. But essentially you've got the actors playing the older versions of Bonnie and Clyde playing the younger versions as well at the start of the show. And I don't think it works particularly well. I feel like it's fine until you get to the bit where they go from being the younger version to the older version. Like, seeing them play the younger version is fine, but in the original staging, they sort of sing the first little section of the song, and then they sort of sing a line together, the younger version and the older version. And the moment that that takeover happens is just like the way that it's sung is one of my favourite bits for each of the characters. Like, vocally, I just think it sounds really good. And I don't like how it happens in this, because you can't have that moment. So what they do instead is they just sort of go off stage, and then they come on singing that line that would normally be like the swap over bit just on their own as an adult, and it just feels like it doesn't have the same effect. I know that they probably didn't want to hire a load of child actors for such a short run, but I just don't think it worked quite as well. There's also then a little bit later on that should involve child Clyde coming on. I think that bit did work really well. It ended up giving Jordan Lutgage like a monologue to do instead, and I feel like he did that very, very well, and it had like a nice emotional impact to it. So I liked it from that perspective. And you could have done that but still had the kids on at the beginning, because like you wouldn't have even known that the kids weren't there in it. They also have cut out a song since last year, but it was actually a song that was added in for the arts production. So I think it was originally written when they were sort of like workshopping for Broadway. It was cut out before the Broadway run, or before like the opening night of the Broadway run anyway, and then it was added back in for the arts version last year. It's a duet between Bonnie and Ted, and I just never really loved that song. I felt like it wasn't necessary, and they've cut it out, which like I'm fine with that. They then sort of changed the ending. Like, some bits they've added in, which is nice. Like, they've added in some things that are actually from like letters that Bonnie Parker actually wrote, and I feel like that they add to the emotional impact of it. But they've also cut out a lot of the bits that sort of show how they were caught, and I feel like that detracts from the emotion of it. So I feel like there's just like tweaks they've made that work for the better, and tweaks they've made that definitely don't. And also, one of the issues I had is that there is a lot of projections that are used in this version of the staging, and because it's in a different theatre, obviously you have to sort of account for how those play in every part of the theatre, whereas in the arts it's a lot smaller, so a lot of the sight lines are similar, and they did not work in the areas that I was sat in either time that I went to see it. I was sat in the back half of the stalls. So actually in the first time I went to see it, I was sat halfway in the stalls, and then the second time I was at the very back of the stalls, and both times it was just like double vision and I couldn't see anything clearly. And what's funny is that when we actually went to the preview, we had the creative team sat in front of us, and at the interval we heard them go, "We're going to have to do a full run through of that and get it working on Monday," and they've not fixed it. I'm assuming that they couldn't find a way to fix it, but it does just detract a little bit, because there are some moments that are like quite pivotal that are sort of being played on this screen, and it just doesn't work. And yeah, sad but true. So unfortunately, like, when I think of Bonnie and Clyde now, like, the version that's on at the minute, I don't love. I don't dislike it. Like, it would still be like a 4-star, but I don't love it. Whereas last year when I saw it, I really, really loved it. It was one of my favourite things I saw last year. So it is just a little bit sad that it's not quite living up to the expectations that I had for it. But that being said, I'm comparing it to something. If you've not seen the previous version, still very good, still very much recommend people going to see it. You've only got a week, it closes next Saturday, but just sadly, compared to what I've seen before, it's not my favourite. And then the last show to talk about on this long rambly video, although actually this video, the time of filming, is only 5 minutes longer than what I had filmed for when I just talked about the March stuff. So I've been more concise than I did the first time I filmed it. But the last show I've got is one that, so they were all at the beginning of April. During that week we were also house hunting. Got that all sorted out, was sort of stress packing throughout all of April, and I moved at the very end of April. Megan moved down for like 2 weeks before. I moved at the very end of April, and had not been to see anything in between because there was nothing on in Sheffield. Did not travel down because obvious reasons, and was not planning on seeing anything else in April, in all fairness. I was planning on seeing things maybe at the beginning of May. And then we were sat here, it was the first night I got in the house, and we were planning on ordering a takeaway, and Meg's phone went off and said that she'd won the lottery for tickets to go and see Cabaret. So Cabaret on the West End, the tickets are normally quite expensive, and you can enter a daily lottery to get tickets for £25 each. And we won it the first day I was here, and like, we're not going to say no to that, so I had to like very quickly find an outfit in my boxes that I'd come down with, and got dressed and went to go and see Cabaret at the Kit Kat Club. And this is incredible. Like, the staging of this show is fantastic. It's all done in the round. The theatre has been completely redesigned, so when you go in, you actually go in through the stage door, and you basically go like downstairs and through like the back of the theatre before you then come back up into like the main area. You get given a shot when you first walk in. The idea is that you are supposed to be at this club in Germany in the 1930s, and it's just so good. And it's just so good. And I feel like I saw Cabaret a few years ago on tour, and I loved the film, but I did not like the stage show at all. And I honestly thought I just maybe didn't like Cabaret as a stage show, and then when I saw it last November, I was like, oh, this is what Cabaret is supposed to be. And I feel like people have talked about how good this production is many times before, and probably like a lot better than I have. But yeah, just like the way that the staging is done, how immersive it all feels, the sort of more, it brings out a lot more of like the sinister edge to it. I mean, Cabaret as a show is quite sinister. It's set in Germany, like during the rise of the Nazis. Like, it's not a happy show at all, but I feel like the way that those moments are played are really like effective within this. There's something like, particularly the moment that sort of leads into the interval, it's quite stark, and you sort of go into it like, oh, okay, this is what's happening now. And yeah, I really want to see it again. This had a different cast than when I saw it last time. This had Amy Lou Wood, who is known for being in Sex Education, and John McCrea, who was in the original cast of Everybody's Talking About Jamie. I really like both of them. It was a different take than what we've seen before. I think that's what's quite interesting with the show as well, is that from what I've seen, every version of the MC and Sally Bowles have been different. Like, it's not that everyone comes in and sort of recreates the same version of it. So I am looking forward to seeing another cast and seeing what they do. John McCrea in particular was fantastic, like vocally stunning, loved it, but also like, again, the sort of like quieter, more sinister moments, fantastic. And yeah, I really want to see this again, but I'm going to keep entering the lottery every day with hopes that we win tickets to see it again, because otherwise they get expensive. We'll see what we can do. I did not say a star rating for Cabaret, that was also a 5-star. Right, I think that is everything. That is everything I saw during the months of March and April. Let's now see if I can edit this video and actually get it up today, shall we? I'm going to stop rambling so that I can actually go and do that. But thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff down below. Let me know if you've seen any shows during the last couple of months. What is your favourite thing that you've seen? Is there anything that you're looking forward to seeing in the future? Like I said, I'm now living in London, so I should be seeing quite a lot more. These videos are only going to get lengthier. But I will see you guys soon with a new video. Bye.